For decades, it's been saving lives, landscapes and livelihoods.
Is by far the best fire tool that we have. It's certainly world leading.
But I bet my bottom dollar many will have never even heard of NAFI. It's a crucial tool in controlling fires across northern Australia. I'll explain why in a minute.
So we can see now across the whole of northern Australia what is burning right now, but also what has burnt throughout the whole year. And then over the 20 years, because we have that history of 20 years of fire information, we can actually produce some really quite sophisticated information about the fire regime.
From the thick scrub of Arnhem Land, the tropical islands of the Tiwis, or escarpments around the Victoria River region, landowners and rangers across the Northern Territory are busy lighting up the country. Last year, Indigenous rangers covered more than 58,000 kilometres by air and road, all in the name of protecting their country from uncontrolled massive bushfires late in the dry season. Northern Australia is one of the most fire-prone landscapes on Earth.
I want to put fire out, we should get this, look.
Controlled burns combine ancient Indigenous knowledge of mosaic burning and modern principles to reduce the severity of fires by strategically burning early on in the season.
So it's a combination of using new technology and trying to achieve a landscape that was similar to before, before we came along.
Fire Officer Stephanie Rouse oversees 11 ranger groups under the banner of the Arnhem Land Fire Abatement Project.
So earlier in the year, we go out and help them with their early burning. So might be going out and ground burning with them, assisting them with the aerial plan burning flight lines and strategies to get the best burn in possible. And then later on in the year, we actually go out and firefight with the rangers. So we're on the boots on the ground.
What has allowed them to do their job safely and efficiently is a little-known piece of software developed right here in the Northern Territory at Charles Darwin University that now covers 70% of the country and has generated interest from across the globe. NAFI, or North Australian Fire Information, started as a grassroots solution to manage fire.
It wasn't our idea. It came from a group of land managers who were out in Arnhem Land and also pastoralists, and they said, we've heard there are these new satellites that have just been launched by the Americans, and apparently they can provide these really good maps of where fires are and where burnt areas are. And could you guys get this up on a website for us? And we said, sure. And so we did it.
Using NASA satellite images and ground stations across Australia, the computer system collects bushfire information, such as up-to-date hotspots, and shows fire scars and fire history.
We'll use previous year's fire scars to plan where we want to do burning the following year. That prevents us from burning the same areas over and over again, and we get different age fuels throughout that landscape, which is really beneficial.
It's that historical data that makes it different to other online fire tools.
So a lot of the other fire services that have maps of fire are focused on emergency response. They're wildfires here and now that could be a threat. What we do is we provide fire information that helps you manage country better. And that means that we're doing things like not focusing on information just on the latest wildfire, but we track fires, the little fires, the patchy burns that land managers are using throughout the year. And we'll build up these maps of burnt areas into an accurate fire history of the whole of a property, the whole of a landscape.
Rangers also use NAFI to fight fires. It keeps them safe, but also means they can get on top of it more quickly.
It helps us be a little bit more strategic as well, because we get to plan rather than directly attacking a fire. We might be able to use the scars that we've already got, but having that imagery allows us to plan it before we actually head out there and use resources, because a lot of the time we're in helicopters and it's quite an expensive effort and very large scale and so remote that, once we get out there we don't have reception, we don't have access to the internet, so having those maps beforehand, helping us plan what our plan of attack is really, really helpful.
Pastoralists too say it reduces some of the danger in the middle of bushfires.
You can absolutely drill down into micro areas, but it also overlays where fires have been and where areas already have been burnt, so that you can work out a fire management plan, where to put fire breaks, but also where to position people safely.
Consolidated Pastoral Company has 8 cattle stations covering over 3.6 million hectares in Western Australia, the Northern Territory and Queensland. CEO Troy Setter says his managers regularly use the service for their carbon reduction burns, but also when unexpected fires flare.
We use it all year round, but particularly during the build-up, as storms increase and lightning and the dry season comes to a peak. It's absolutely essential for proactive fire management and reactive fire management.
We saw most recently with that Tennant Creek fire, there was a lot of interest at that large landscape scale fire in watching it move and to be able to monitor it quite closely. And NAFI was one of the primary data sources that was being used to support that fire. So the usage of NAFI sort of tripled over that week, and we had to provide extra support for emergency services in that case. So we can see the fire moving into our early dry season burn.
For a small program that was led from landholders, its popularity has been off the charts.
I remember September last year, we suddenly were getting 10 times the amount of usage that we would normally get at that time of year. So it created a few problems for us, actually. We had to shift the whole thing to a bigger server.
Other threats to the system are now at play.
One of the things we have to do with these days, of course, is, like everybody, a lot of cyber threats.
As the focus ramps up on a carbon progressive future, it's becoming a critical tool for helping calculate credits generated from burning into an industry valued at over $150 million, according to the Australian government. The methodology uses early season strategic burning in the dry season to reduce the number and severity of late season wildfires, which emit the most greenhouse gases, in particular methane and nitrous oxide, into the atmosphere. By reducing fires, rangers and landholders are cutting greenhouse gas emissions and paid for it.
Because we had this robust data set, we were actually also able to show the amount of burnt each year, which was able to then produce the calculations that underpin all the carbon calculations that support the savanna burning carbon abatement methodology, which now operates across the savanna landscapes of Northern Australia, primarily but not exclusively led by Indigenous land managers.
Wildfires are some of the biggest emitters of carbon in Australia, and the NAFI tool is regarded as essential for reducing carbon emissions in Northern Australia.
So those carbon projects generate quite a bit of income for us. So at the moment, just I think under half our income comes from industry groups like them and other fire manager groups, including people like National Parks.
This important service is an example of how, from little things, big things grow. But the NAFI service has never been able to secure consistent funding.
The problem we've got is that we tend to get 1 year at a time. And that's a real problem for staff, for planning and that sort of thing. And I can see the problem the federal government have here. It's because it doesn't fit under any particular federal portfolio.
So it's used by the wider community, and it has a real good for Australia. And fire control in Northern Australia is absolutely one of the key planks to reduce Australia's carbon emissions. It's very small change compared to some of the other expenses that are being put towards 2030 and 2050 in Australia.
Other countries are now trying to adapt the platform.
Places in Southern Africa, places like Namibia, Mozambique, Botswana, but also Papua New Guinea, Timor-Leste, places in South America, in Central America.
The platform that came from humble roots is now a real lifeline in the bush.
Certainly NAFI has been a contributor to providing that base information, which has led to, I think, arguably some of the best fire management outcomes in the world at the moment. And I think all Australians should be really proud of this sort of incredible ecological achievement.